we are live on our November Town Council meeting. It is Tuesday, November 10th. All of council is present. Another Zoom meeting. So welcome everybody. Let's call this meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have the prayer, which I am up this month. So for those of you who would like to bow in prayer with me, please do so. Lovingly and gracious God, you're indeed the giver of all good gifts, and we thank you today for your blessings you have so graciously bestowed upon this wonderful town. We continue to seek your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all those who have placed their trust and confidence in our leadership. Give us the insight to lead with integrity, that our decisions may reflect what is right and good. Help us make decisions that are for the good of all, and help us to treat all of our neighbors with love and respect. Dear Lord, grant us the humility to always seek your will in all that we do and say. In this we pray, amen. We have the agenda. Mr. Orlando, is there any change to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. One minor change. Under formal agenda items, simply ask that you switch items 3 and 2. So item 3 becomes number 2 and so on. Okay.
Will you remind me if I forget that at the time?
Yes.
Okay. With that change, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to approve the agenda as changed?
So moved.
Your second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Next, we have one set of minutes from the October meeting of Bluffton Town Council on October 13th. Are there any changes to the minutes as presented? If not, is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. We have presentations, celebrations, and recognitions. And first and foremost is a recognition of Captain Scott Chandler. And I think he is on the call. Do I see you, Captain?
I'm here somewhere.
There you are.
Hello.
So we were talking a bit ago, Captain, that I think you started about the time I was elected mayor. How long have you been with our police force?
Since 2006.
2006. So before I won, I was on council, and you have just kind of been our steady boat in the night.
I've hung around for a while, man.
You hang around and you just know that light at the end of the tunnel, and you keep that as your guide. And we've watched your family grow, and just really have seen you grow as a person in this department, and to step up not once but twice as an interim during some amazingly strenuous times. Hurricane, pandemic, you just name it. And you were just such a good role model for our officers and just kept the course. And really, we wanted to thank you. We have no money to give you. So we just wanted a minute. If any of council wants to say anything, feel free, but just wanted to let the people watching tonight just know how thankful we are for you, and you just make us better. So
thank you. Well, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for the opportunity, one, to serve the citizens in this capacity, but also to continue to work with the wonderful men and women of this department. So thank you for that opportunity. I appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. Anyone else want to chime in or ditto, or feel free at this time? This is to embarrass him and
well, I've already spoken to him and thanked him, and he's done a great job as he did before and prior. And again, thank you for your time and your service and being brave enough to step up.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Great.
Same thing, Scott. Thank you for everything. I'm can't wait to get out to your farm so I can come out there and help you do something.
Absolutely.
Whatever.
All invited. a lot of stuff to do.
Want to do something, I can give you a list.
Mayor, I'm still waiting to see you on top of that tractor there, pushing some dirt around.
Hey, I can get on that tractor.
I believe it.
I can do that. So anyone else?
Captain Chandler, I also want to say thank you, and you didn't let me down. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. It means a lot. Appreciate it.
And ditto, I echo everyone's sentiments. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And we don't always do that. So, but you know, we're all busy, but please know, and I think the men and women in that department know how much we support them. It's not often said, and we need to do more of thanks and appreciation. We all do. So
We do understand that, and we thank you for that.
good. Well, good. Okay. We called him Chiefish for about 8
There's a few
months.
names floating around.
Now he's captain. So,
That's right.
well, good. Well, thank you much.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Absolutely. You have
Good
a good
night.
night. Next, we have our Beaufort County School District Student of the Month. And I believe Kim said he may be calling in, or is he in, Kim?
Yes, he's in the waiting room. There he is. He's connecting right now.
Okay. So while he's connecting, and he may not know we're talking, he might interrupt us, but that's fine. We've done this every month for what, 4 years or so. And
Mhm.
it's a character education kind of program that the board put together under the past superintendent. And we just love celebrating our young people and wanted to take it a next level and do our own celebration to our students. So the cluster of Bluffton, which is almost half, if not more, of the entire population of the school district, falls into Bluffton. So all of those kids get bundled in a pool, and teachers can recognize and nominate them for a character trait each month. And we've missed it a little bit because of COVID, but really this is starting to see we're getting back to some type of normalcy. We got our student of the month this month, and Elijah, are you on? If
Yes,
you're-
ma'am, I'm on.
Elijah, how are you? Can y'all see him? Elijah, Eli or Elijah?
My name's Elijah, but I go by Eli.
Well, let's go by Eli. Let's see your state shirt. What are you wearing?
This is for wrestling. I
Excellent.
won the state championship for wrestling this year.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You're a senior at May River, and your character trait was acceptance. And I'm thrilled to see a high school student get this, because you're bundled in with all these young elementary and middle school students who, like, it's a goal of theirs to get one of these character traits. So I'm glad you didn't feel too busy or too cool not to realize that character is important. Do you want to talk? Do you know why you were given this recognition at May River?
I know one of my coaches nominated me for it, and I'm very grateful and very thankful to receive this.
Well, it means a lot to us. I'm going to read a little bit. Usually we have you up and we give you a coin, which we will get to you in a certificate. I think it's really helpful for scholarships. I think you get to meet us on council. Any of us would write letters of reference for you. And I think this is a good way to get to know other students. So can I read a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. That's no
Okay.
problem.
Okay, it basically, Eli, this is from, I guess, your coach. Eli deserves a nomination for May Rivers High School Student of the Month award due to the way he welcomed new student to our school and football team. We had a new senior from Michigan join our team a week after practice. As we all know, it can be very difficult for the new kid, especially during your senior year. Eli immediately reached out to the new player and went out of his way to make the student feel included on the team. He continued to foster that relationship over the past few weeks. He helped the new player with his transition academically, athletically, and socially. Without Eli showing acceptance towards the new kid, the student may have had a more difficult time with his transition. The way Eli goes out of his way to include others exemplifies the meaning of acceptance and true leadership. And you know, Eli, that was from May River, but it was bundled in with all of the other nominations. And you just aren't the May River student of the month. You're the whole Bluffton school cluster. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anything you want to say?
I just want to say how thankful I am, how appreciative I am to receive this award. It means a lot to me. And like you said earlier, it's going to be a big help to college, and I really appreciate it all.
Well, great. Well, you're appreciated. Let's give them a hand, a Zoom virtual hand. Thank you. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of council, but I know you probably have homework to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Or something more important. Well, thank you, Eli, and thank you for coming on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you too.
Absolutely. The next items are proclamations, and they are for a smoke-free and vape-free awareness, and also no to violence against women. These are all awareness months for those two areas, and a group of students of all the high schools, Low Country Alliance for Healthy Youth, had these proclamations. So they're going to be posted on our website. Very important, and please read them. The next is number 5, a pandemic COVID update from Scott. You want to give us any update on that, Scott? If you're talking, you're on mute. Scott, you're...
There we go. A few technical difficulties, but we're getting there. Okay. Council had asked last month when we updated our emergency ordinances for an update on the COVID numbers. And so what I have for you here tonight are some numbers to reflect where we currently are. So before we get to Bluffton Zip Codes, which is what was asked for, I wanted to provide you with an update of the graphic you saw last month. This is the Beaufort County 2-week incidence rate of number of COVID cases reported per 100,000 population. So just for some context, when you first implemented the emergency ordinance requiring face coverings on July 1, which was around this date, we were around 336 cases per 100,000 population. The latest 2-week period that's closed in Beaufort County is November 4th, and we're at 132 cases per 100,000 population. If we break that down to the DHEC threat level, if you will, we are still in the moderate category. Now for a look at the Bluffton zip codes. This chart provides the number of reported cases in zip codes 29909 and 29910 in 2-week increments that coincide with the dates on the previous slide. Again, to help put these numbers in context, on July 1, as you can see, there were 34 cases in 29909 and 184 cases in 29910 for a total of 218 cases. The latest numbers for the 2-week period ending November 4th show 33 cases in 29909, 85 cases in 29910 for a total of 118 active COVID cases. So though you can see the numbers of cases spiked in mid to late July around this time frame, we're back into a moderate incidence rate. However, the numbers are trending upward again as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and we need to remain vigilant. Just as a reminder, where the 29910 and 29909 zip codes reside. Any questions?
Any questions of Scott on this? Is it something more you'd like to see? Do you have questions on what he presented?
Just what, could you put that map back up there just for a second, Scott?
Yeah.
Just that where it separates the area codes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the zip codes.
Right.
So there's 2 pink colors here. So where's that 29909?
29909 is everything that's pink, but the shaded pink is the 29909 that's in town limits. So it's this area.
I got you.
That's 299.
It was just up there for a flash. Thank you. That's my only
And
question.
29910 in the town limits again is the shaded areas. You can see the bright green areas are our donut holes. That's the unincorporated areas of the county. But the majority of our town is in 29910.
But okay, the light pink is the town.
This is in town limits.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're
But
welcome.
you can't break it down to in town and out of town just by zip code. You're just showing us this to show that there are some in town.
That's correct, ma'am. And that's a very good point to raise, I believe, because as you can see, the 29909 zip code encompasses Sun City. It's a very dense population area that's not within the town limits.
Any other questions for Scott on this?
Yeah, Scott, this is Mike. I have a question. What was
Yes.
the first graph you showed us versus the second graph?
This one,
Yes.
this is DHEC's 2-week incident rate. It's what they call it. And these are the numbers for Beaufort County. And what these are the number of COVID cases that have been reported per 100,000 population.
So is the second slide?
The second slide is zip codes. You can see there's some correlation with the shape of the data, right?
Right.
But these are the numbers of reported cases in a 2-week period within these zip codes. So the orange represents the number of cases that were reported in 29909, and the blue is 29910. And together the aggregate is the top number.
So the percentages of this second one is higher than the first. Is that because of the population difference?
Percentage, say that again?
So if you divide the total of, I don't know, 114 or 119 into 331, and then you do the same thing on the other slide, it's a higher percentage on the second slide. And my question is that because of the population difference between?
Well, that would track because the highest numbers in the county historically have been within the Bluffton zip codes of 29909 and 29910 for the duration of the pandemic. So it would make sense that percentage-wise, you would have a higher percentage on the second slide than the first slide. The first slide is all of Beaufort County.
Right.
The second slide is just 29909 and 29910.
Scott, just maybe helpful if you do this every month, maybe let the graph show like on the Bluffton zip codes versus the countywide where that moderate or level, it would help because the one graph's bigger than the other. And I just couldn't really, or if you could put it side by side so we could see, where does.
So just to clarify, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over top of you, Mayor. Just to clarify, the graph that you're looking at now is the one that you prefer to view.
Great.
So,
any other questions of council on this? Thank you, Scott. And I think let's keep this kind of tentatively to do if you can update it every 2 weeks. That'll get us for a whole month. So I really appreciate
absolutely.
it. Great.
I'll be happy to. You can provide it in your packets every month as well.
Thank you so much. Public comment. Public comment is 3 minutes. It's done electronically right now, and our town clerk takes them 2 hours before council and she reads them. And so far she's read very, very long ones and it's made it to the 3-minute mark. Kim, do we have public comment for tonight?
We don't have any for tonight.
Okay, we have no public comment. So public comment is over. In the future, if you'd like to make a public comment until we get back into some person-to-person meeting, our standards are different. All of our government standards are different, but the ones we've implemented are electronically submitted. Send them 2 hours before council. Our town clerk will take them and read them and put them in the record for future. So moving on to communications from mayor and council. Anything from mayor and council right now? Okay, I've got a couple. Oh, go on. Who is this? I can't see everybody. Hey, Larry.
Hey, just a brief moment, but I've received a lot of calls and a lot of inquiries about the mishap with the sewage spill that we had here in the last week or 10 days, whatever it's been now. And I just want to say that the response time was very much unacceptable. And for those people who said that reached me and said that they didn't know who to call or what to do because it was Sunday and all that, I just want everyone to know that they could call me 24 hours a day in the middle of the night, and I will investigate and I will get something moving on it before regular 9 o'clock in the morning business hours work, because this is very important and it's going to take a team effort from all of our residents. When they notice something, contact them. Don't worry about what time of night it is or whatever, but just be vigilant on, stopping it as soon as possible. So I'm just putting myself out there. It's my desire to help stop something when something's going wrong. And you can call me. I answer my phone more at night when I hear it than I may in the daytime, but I wanted to just say that. So, and thanks to the people who did call and report it before it got worse than what it was.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry. Anything else from Mayor Council? I think all of us ditto that, Larry. And I think people did email or text pretty much all of us on council. Things tend to happen on weekends, out of our control. I remember years and years ago, Mayor Johnston's driving down Red Cedar, and all of a sudden he sees trees coming down, and he jumps out of his car and stands in the front of a tree removing device, and called, and our town manager at the time came out and stopped it. So just because you see something doesn't mean we automatically know, and we need all eyes and ears on the ground, especially when it comes to the river, but many other things as well. So Mark always answers the phone when we call him. And if it's better to call us, we can call Mark and he can get on it. Anything else from council? I'll add a couple of things. We're going to have a new time to meet next month. We're going to meet at 5 while we're doing Zoom, and Mark's looking at solutions in January, especially after our ordinance on electronic meetings, of how to bring some solutions on getting back to meeting in person and Zoom, kind of a hybrid for those who just aren't comfortable yet. At least knowing if we go in that direction, there are ways to meet by Zoom and to meet in person. So we'll wait for Mark to give us some ideas on that. But I think for the meantime, this month and next month, we'll continue the way we're going. It's worked very well, but I know sometimes it's nice to see each other as well. So we look for Mark on those ideas. Last call, anyone else? Okay, moving on to workshop items. A very important one. It is on the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Article 5, Historic District Design Standards relating to building types, maximum building footprint, and height. Heather, you are up.
Okay, can everyone see that and hear me, I hope?
Looks good.
Okay, so as you stated, this is a workshop item for possible UDO amendments related to the building size in the Old Town Bluffton Historic District. So as you may be aware, with the increase in commercial and infill development within the historic district, there's been a great deal of public concern regarding the overall mass and scaling of buildings. We've received public comments at the Historic Preservation Commission, as well as HPRC, the Historic Preservation Review Commission, as well as I know there's been public comment presented to Town Council as well. So the purpose of this workshop is to provide an overview of building size and building types, which I will get into. And then what I would request is direction as to whether or not amendments to the UDO may be necessary. Just a couple of background notes on the historic district and intent statements from both the Old Town Master Plan as well as Unified Development Ordinance. The Old Town Master Plan notes that the Old Town's character is its franchise and its key to the economy. It further then provides a unified vision for Old Town that guides policies and programs, which are then translated to the Unified Development Ordinance and the rules and regulations that we have within that. As you know, the UDO has been amended recently, and that's included some changes to the historic district, specifically to some architectural details, such as shutter details and materials and things of that nature, as well as minimum lot size. However, at that time, we did not address the concerns we've recently heard about building size. There are 5 zoning districts in the historic district, and within those zoning districts, they allow for different building types, and those different building types have different building footprints as well as building sizes. Again, there's been concern stated that some of those maximums may be too large for the Old Town. And as you know, periodically we continue to review and refine the Unified Development Ordinance to make sure that everything's in keeping with the vision and adjust accordingly. So you've heard from me several amendments to the UDO recently, and so this is something that we typically do to make sure that everything's aligned and meeting council's goals and directives. There's a couple of specific things that are related to those building sizes. Like I said, the zoning districts, there's the Main Street building type. There's an additional building type that's included in the UDO, as well as shopfront areas and how buildings should be designed for shopfront areas, as well as a provision for large footprint buildings. Again, like I stated, there's 5 separate zoning districts in the historic district. That includes the neighborhood core, the neighborhood center, neighborhood general, neighborhood conservation, and the riverfront edge. Both the neighborhood core and the neighborhood center, they're the more intensive districts that allow a vast array of land uses as well as building sizes. The neighborhood core, and I'll show you a map in a moment, but the neighborhood core is the intent of that, and the purpose statement is that that's the commercial heart of the historic district. And for example, the promenade is located within that district. Then there's also the neighborhood center district, and that is more moderate intensity mixed use development. And that includes portions of Calhoun Street, Boundary Streets, south of May River and north of Bridge. This here is a map that shows that historic district. That heavy dashed black line shows the limits of the historic district. You'll see up here, if you can see my purple pointer, that's that district that I referred to, that neighborhood core and then neighborhood center. Excuse me, other way around, neighborhood center, neighborhood core there. So the first thing that I want to touch on is the Main Street building type. The Main Street building type is within their form-based code. That's a building type that's permitted in that neighborhood core and neighborhood center districts. That building type allows the largest building footprint of all building types. So the Unified Development Ordinance has a maximum of 3,500 square feet for that building footprint. So what actually touches the ground, that impact to the ground. It also has a building size range from 2,000 square feet to a maximum of 8,000 square feet. So just doing some quick math, that could mean if you were to max out on your building footprint at 3,500 square feet, you could go about 2.5 stories. And then just for reference, the new building that was constructed on Church Street next to the Bluffton General Store, that is a Main Street building type. That building type was built with a footprint of 1,892 square feet for footprint, with a building square footage of 4,745. So just to give you a reference of how that may look in the real world. There's also another provision in the Unified Development Ordinance that addresses size and that massing and scaling of buildings, and that's the shopfront areas. So within the districts, the shopfront buildings and shopfront areas is another design component. A lot of the design components to do with this are more to do with that pedestrian scale, windows, doors, things of that nature. One thing that staff has seen, and why we're bringing this forward to you as a workshop item, is that if that Main Street building type becomes more prevalent to max out your building size, that it may become, it could change that character of the historic district. Another provision in the UDO that relates to building size is large footprint buildings. There's no specific dimensions with the overall design, but there is criteria in the UDO that does address large footprint buildings. And that's listed here on the screen. in relationship to the height, how it is situated on a block, as well as where that back of house loading dock service areas are all positioned. Next steps, what I'm asking this evening is whether or not you would like town staff to revisit those various building types, like I mentioned, or even in addition to that, where they are permitted in the district, as well as that maximum permitted size and footprint. If you do direct staff to move forward, we would engage the Historic Preservation Commission as well as the Planning Commission in what those recommendations are. In your packet, you do have a lot of information as far as what the UDO speaks to as far as the minimum and maximums. And we have compiled a lot of information as far as what has been built recently. However, at this time, I don't know what that specific recommendation would be if I were to come back to you. But we would certainly work on an analysis to meet any direction that you provide this evening. And then ultimately, Planning Commission would be responsible for a recommendation to you all after a public hearing. And with that, I'll entertain any questions if you want me to go back to any slides. But like I said, at this point, just want to really find out whether or not the concerns that have been raised recently should direct staff to look at more UDO amendments to make sure that we're complying with that Old Town Master Plan and meeting the goals and directives of council.
Questions of Heather? This is a workshop, so she's taking all comments. It's not that anything we're voting on, but she needs our advice to move forward.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. Heather, yes, in my opinion, the sizes do need to be looked at. You know, I've heard nothing but unhappy folks about, you know, the corner of Bridge and Calhoun. So I guess I'm not telling you what they should be, but should they be looked at? And is that too many eggs in a dozen carton? In my opinion, yes. So is that what you're looking for? Is that what you're asking? Okay, thank you.
Any questions or thoughts or comments? I have a couple, but I'll let everyone else go.
Mayor, I'll jump in.
Okay.
I'm like Larry and you and everyone, we all had some feedback from the citizens, but my understanding, at least, and maybe I'm incorrect, but I thought predominantly the issue was the neighborhood center area, not necessarily the neighborhood core area, which I agree with the sentiments of the neighborhood center area. Neighborhood core has always been destined to be a little bit more commercialized as far as scale, with like the promenade right there and the new apartment complex that went up. But anyway, that was my take on it. I'll let it go at that.
Okay. Good feedback for Heather. Anyone else at the moment? I'll jump in on a couple of things and maybe get other council members thinking. I heard over the past years when I watch HPC, you have architects that come with, and I don't know if the word variation. So how does that affect if we change? I'm all for changing footprint, by the way. I think we need to be much smaller, maybe, you know, 2,000 to 2,500 footprint, and maybe max it out at square footage around 4,500, just a thought. But can somebody come then and say, oh, we have a variation of this plan? What does that do? And can we have a max on any variations of plans as well if we change this? You can answer it or just take it as, you know.
That's actually, I would really like the feedback on that, because they can always ask for that a deviation or variation from building types. And one thing that we have a lot of buildings that fall into what's considered as an additional building type. And the additional building type, I think, is a great tool. It's very useful to, if there's something that doesn't quite fit in that form-based code box, and you still have to meet all the other rules and regulations, but that doesn't necessarily have a maximum building size associated with it. It just kind of falls into place when you apply all those other rules and regulations. So we could take that feedback and look at that building type as well as those different districts And like I said, I just highlighted on those two districts because that's where that Main Street building type is allowed, and that's our largest building type in the UDO. So we can certainly look at, and I would recommend that staff continue to do an analysis of what's out there now, and then we can again put the numbers to the picture out there in the real world.
Well, I would just, my suggestion on that is whatever we set, any other building type should not be higher or a larger footprint. It should have that cap as the same. The other thing, I think, I don't know, I'm curious what it'd look like overall. I've had this concern for a while now, just what is the tipping point of commercial versus, when are we going to start seeing empty shop fronts? Not that we can dictate everything, but how much is too much commercial? How big do we want to get to change the whole look of our town, which scares me sometimes a lot, seeing what has been granted, and it's been granted because of our UDOs. So I think, so I'm gonna end it, yes to everything everyone said, but do look at that deviation. And I am definitely, mass and scale should be absolutely a critical part of HPC's decision, where if it doesn't fit within the streetscape, I think it's no discussion. I don't know how you figure that out either, but those are my thoughts. Anyone else?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a comment also, or comment.
Okay.
And looking at everything that's listed here, Heather, I didn't see anything that talks about or addresses parking, because I know we are focused on like the scale and size of the structures going up. But a concern too is with all the structures going out and seeing that we already don't have space and things for parking. Is there going to be some consideration be put into the plan of the new UDO on how we're going to address that in terms of where's this parking going to come from as structures and things continue to be allowed or permitted in the area?
And certainly we can always look at that. The parking, we haven't at this point made any additional changes since we made our last changes for residential, and just the residential, and let me make sure I get this right, residential and restaurants, they're required to meet their minimum parking requirements, which is 6 spaces per 1,000 square feet of restaurant. The residential, I don't have handy, I apologize right now at my fingertips, but that must be met on site. So they cannot use any provision for shared parking, on-street parking, anything like that for those sites. And then there's various provisions for parking. But obviously, like I said, we continue to evaluate the code and make changes as we need to. So if that's something council would like us to move forward with in future amendments, we certainly can do that as well.
Right, and that is something, just to follow up, Bridget, just I think in the last couple of years, we increased it greatly. And I think we've just started seeing projects this past year that are having to conform to that, and they can't use our own street parking. So I'm curious how the recent projects will address that as well to keep their parking on site. Mr. Hamilton, you chimed in too at the same time. So I know you had a question or thought.
Yeah, I have thoughts about and concerns more in line with concerns that Old Town is starting to become somewhere else USA. We have to figure out who we want to be when we grow up. There are a lot of future plans for the Old Town, and we don't have any. We don't have a destination as far as I'm concerned, or when it's going to be too much. That cluster is already, to me, becoming a place where we can't control the traffic, and we continue to need more parking. The town has invested a great deal of money in parking, and most of the stuff that we're seeing today, even if these developers wanted to come in, they are thinking they can share some of the parking that we already created. And there's no way for us to continue to do traffic count, because we take these project on one by one, and we don't see the overall picture, the overall impact of what's that going to do to our small downtown area. That 1 square mile is really becoming just overcrowded. Someplace we have to figure out when is enough. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. You know, I just a thought, this Old Town Master Plan was done in 2004 when we had a blank canvas. I mean, we didn't even have a streetscape on May River Road. And I've just been toying with this in my head, and I don't like to say study, but where is the time, or when is the time to bring back that group or someone else to say, okay, now you're growing up. Do you really want to grow up this way, or do you want to grow up another way? And, I don't think anyone really knew what 8,000 square feet was going to do on every lot in Old Town, but now we're starting to see it. And it just goes back to my concern about, how do we keep the coolness without becoming Anywhere USA? So I think maybe strategic plan, work through these, and maybe get someone who, does this every day to kind of give us a relook. Maybe it is Josh Martin, maybe it is Dover Cole or someone else, or someone on staff. So.
And I will state too, I know I keep bringing up, we're getting ready to embark on the comprehensive plan, and which is going to be a very intensive planning process for, a guide for the next 20 years for the town of Bluffton. So a lot of this we may be able to kind of partner all those efforts together as far as the comments about Old Town and revisiting that Old Town Master Plan and things of that nature. So we are getting ready to jump into that project at the first of the year. So there'll be more to come.
Okay.
If everyone feels that way, then I think we need to really figure out how to slow down until we catch up. Because from what I can see right now, by the time we get to January, we're going to have some stuff approved that we can't change.
Okay. I had a similar question offline, just asking that, what happens with this workshop? And, people come forward, and maybe we need Heather and Mark to get together to give us some guidance on what to do. We have a certified historic district. So I think just I don't have an answer, Fred, but we have a lot of talented people that can listen to our concerns and give us some guidance on what to do. Any other thoughts on this? This is a workshop item. Anything you think of post-meeting, please send it to Heather. If you would just let us all know what you're thinking, or if Heather can send out a recap of any subject. If anyone watching on live tonight, if you were unable to get on early, if you have thoughts and you live in Bluffton, please send us some thoughts and ideas. We're all in this together, and I think we've done a great job, but we just don't, this tipping point, where do we stay at a good level?
Mayor,
Who's talking?
Dan.
Oh, hey, Dan. Yes.
Final thought. All good comments. I think since I've been sitting here at the table, the changes we've made, for example, in the Old Town Master Plan, if you look at the neighborhood center area and some others, for example, you can't have a restaurant now on a side street.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a car lot or parking on a corner. So there's some built-in protections that we have. And, the question to parking we addressed 2 years ago, and doesn't mean it doesn't need to be tweaked. But I have not had a complaint on that issue since we tweaked it. And again, so we've captured a lot of these things, I hope, The scale and footprint issue, it just came to our into our cross sites. It's new to us, and so again, I think we just need to remember what we have done, and there are some built-in protections, and then just see where we come out after we review all of this. And I do think it's time for a review, like you mentioned, Mayor.
Yeah. You know, I had a question, and I agree, the corner parking lot, all the things you said, and maybe this is a Terry question. This is a crazy time, and we see it everywhere. It's just, real estate is off the charts. How can we hold off on any new plans until we figure this out? On a building type, on something so large and massive that if you see it in, you know, another block down the road, it will change the look that so many people put their time and energy in making such a beautiful place. So how do we do that?
Mayor, this is Terry. Moratoriums are very difficult, and they're looked at very, not harshly, but they're looked at very closely by any type of court. So moratorium is one issue, but you'd have to tie it to the lack of providing some fundamental service in order to have a moratorium have any legs on it. That would be one aspect. Two would be to accelerate our efforts to make modifications to the ordinance and define mass and scale perhaps a little better, talk about footprints a little bit more, and get an ordinance in front of you, and you could then invoke the pending ordinance doctrine. But those are the two primary ways of trying to do it. I am not an advocate of deliberately dragging feet. I don't think that's not our reputation. I don't think it should become our reputation, but we can be as careful as we need to be in order to make sure that development review is done at a deliberate pace, it's done properly, that planning commission can review it once or twice. But I think we need to get cracking on updating the 2004 master plan. Heather, is that what you said? The downtown, the historic district master plan is from 2004?
I believe that 2004, 2006, I believe.
Okay. We need to get that. We need to get that in the process of being updated. And I think we need to accelerate our efforts to make amendment changes with the guidance of council.
Well,
I don't know if I answered your questions clearly enough, but that's the best I can do off the top of my head right now.
Well, no, you did. I just know there are a lot of people watching at what's been approved. A moratorium's been put on in Clemson. I was there a couple of weeks ago, and just too much craziness is going on before the infrastructure is resolved. And I know it's a tough one, but it is a tool we can use in areas. But if we can accelerate and define and push out process, we all can slow things down. And there's no guarantee that I think that make it until something's gone through the committees, we can change it, right? Even if they come for development review. Nothing is set in stone for what we currently have until it goes through Planning Commission or HPC. And, I'm all for, I think this is a very important square mile. All of our town's important, but this was the reason the rest of the town grew, because of the deliberance we put into this process. And accelerate and define, how can we do it quickly? If we want to do a moratorium, we have that as an option. So quick, maybe this is your speed run. Anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing there. I think, in seeing the direction that we're going in and knowing the development plans that are coming down the pike, we have to make sure that we're mitigating what's going on. I brought up the issue of parking. I know a great deal has been done to address those needs so far and where we currently are. But just in seeing what's coming up, that has to be something too that we put a focus on. And I had mentioned that because it wasn't in the presentation, just knowing that that's equally as important for the attraction that's going to be, that's already in the area and coming to the area. And we don't want to focus on one area and not look at, an outlying issue that's going to be such a great impact. Because when we look at the contract with the Bluffton taxi and like the corner parking that just came about prior to those issues, or prior to that coming into existence, that was a huge problem down into that area. So I'm just saying, I want to make sure that we're mitigating and looking at what are the options going to be, that we can accommodate that as we continue to allow development in that area, because you can't do one and not think of the other.
Good feedback. Okay, Heather, do you understand everything? And we can work with Terry on process and delay, and not delay, but process and thoroughness. And we can discuss other ways. So anything else for Heather? This is a workshop. Let's move this on quickly and get it through the committees and see their thoughts and get it back to us. Okay, next we have a public hearing and final hearing on 2 items. And I will start with the first one. It's consideration of amendments to the Chapter 23, the UDO Article 4, zoning districts, Article 9, definitions and interpretations to add short-term rental units, to establish certification process for short-term rental units. This is public hearing and final reading. Heather, you're up on this. Let's have the call for public hearing. Kim, were there any comments for public hearing on this item?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I'll still do first call for public hearing, the comment on public hearing, second call for comment for public hearing of this item, third and final call for public comment at the public hearing for this item. Public hearing is closed. Final reading on this. Heather, you are up. Were there changes from first reading to now?
No, they were not. There are no changes as a result of the recommendation at first reading. I can answer any questions, go through a brief presentation, or I also have the proposed motion on the screen. So,
are there any questions of Heather on this that you'd like clarified from last month?
Yes, I do.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hamilton.
Heather, there is provision we have that it says that the town will not inspect these homes when they come online, but rely on the owner or the manager to provide us with an affidavit saying that it meets the town's requirements. Can you go to that provision, please?
Oops, sorry. Is that in the second? I believe that's in the permitting process. Right. This one I have up is, if you give me a moment, I can.
But isn't that in the item 2?
It's in the second item, yes.
Craig, can we discuss that on the second agenda item on that?
Sure.
Yes, this item just affects the Unified Development Ordinance and the actual use and the definitions. And then the next agenda item is the process and how to actually implement.
Okay.
Does what you hear him asking affect any of the definitions in this agenda item?
No, it does not.
Okay. Are you okay with moving forward on this and then?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions on this part of the short-term rental final reading? If not, is there a motion to approve second and final reading of amendments to Chapter 23, Article 4, and Article 9, short-term rental units and homestay rentals?
So moved.
Your second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Now we're on to public hearing and final reading of consideration of amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, Article 5. Public hearing. Were there public comments on this, Kim?
No.
Okay. I will call first reading for public comment on this item. Second reading for public comment on this item. Third and final for public comment on this item? Public hearing is closed. So is everything the same from first to second reading? Would you pull up Fred? Do you have Fred's question to pull that up and answer it?
Yes, that's what I was getting to. So staff did not make any changes as a result of the recommendation at first reading. So on the screen here's the actual regulations that pertain to short-term rental units. And I believe it is in the actual application itself is, again, should this be approved, the application includes the general information, definitions, and process. And the process that we've worked with using, again, looking at our neighbors and best management practices, as well as the fire marshal and the fire code that's in effect, as well as the building code that's in effect, is that when the structure is built, it's constructed as the residential construction code. The fire marshal does not actually have authority to go in and inspect residential structures. The building inspectors do at the time of construction and move forward. So this follows those best management practices as far as what's in place and what's posted. Should there be any, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through probably too fast here.
Heather, I just can't see what you're scrolling through. Sorry.
So this here is, and there's a lot of information, I can stop wherever. So the information, this is the draft application that would follow the changes to that permitting ordinance. So this is a lot of information that we would be asking of the applicants in those terms and conditions that follow the amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance as far as the definitions, so that there's no unknowns. The responsibilities of the management company and the primary contact. Again, going through here, as far as the licenses, the permits, what's required, the renewals, and that life safety checklist, and the posting requirement. So the recommendation is that all of the documents have to be posted in that short-term rental unit in a very conspicuous location. So the back of the door, refrigerator, somewhere where it's not hidden. And this is everything that must be included, the minimum of what must be included in that. So going through again, here's what they would be filling in. And again, that required documentation. So there's the fee, that checklist, the affidavit, as well as the document. So here's that certification that they would be required to do. And again, it would be required to be, we're proposing that be required to be notarized as well. And this may be, Councilman Hamilton, what you're referring to. So this is the actual acknowledgement affidavit. So this, again, outlines what those rules and regulations are so that they know it, they have it with them when they leave, they have a copy, it's all on file. Again, what all of those rules are, and here's some of the life safety requirements as far as what's required. And again, for the conduct and things that are expected. And again, I know this is a lot of information, but there's a lot of things that we would like them to be aware of and know. And here's those requirements as far as what they have to certify is there. And then there's more authorized for their agent. But again, speaking with the fire marshal, just the way that building code is structured, fire marshal doesn't have the authority to inspect. The same kind of holds true for the building inspectors, because once it's built and constructed, and this is that additional certification. Now, should there be a violation or an enforcement issue, we certainly always have the means to and the authority to go and inspect.
Did that answer your question, Fred?
I have a question also.
Okay, Fred's on mute. Fred, did that answer your question? Okay, Larry asked.
On page 2, Heather.
Page 2 of the staff report, or page 2 of, sorry.
Heather, can you not make that bigger? I asked early, can you not plus that? I just can't. There you go.
Is that good? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
On my screen, I've got everything shrunk here. Apologize.
It's on page 2 of the staff report, Department of Growth Management, yes.
Okay. And I may have to just make this smaller for a moment. Just so I can see where I'm going here. Okay.
Okay, right there in the middle, right there, but it says because of short-term rental units, it is considered to be a residential structure that the town of Bluffton staff does not propose to conduct any initial inspection of the property. Instead, the owner or the agent must provide a complete life safety affidavit to indicate whether certain safety measures are in place. And then you use reference for Savannah and the city of Beaufort. And but if we can't for ourselves, and then we rely on an affidavit that maybe someone best friend could sign off on, how can we say that those things that we require, the posting is actually there? And now we know that it's not a residential unit when they tell us that they're going to use it for rental or short-term rental. We know what the intent is. So why would we treat it as if it was a home?
Fred, we can change it. I mean, are you asking, do you want an audit after the fact, or do you want to follow the same inspection that the city of Beaufort does?
First of all, I'm asking why we are kind of relaxed on that first. I want to get an opinion before I go any further. I want to make sure I'm heading in the right direction.
Okay, sorry.
And I can answer, and I know, or Terry Finger as well. We did have this reviewed by Richardson LeBruce as part of the review of the ordinance. So the rationale for staff and recommending the process as we've had outlined here is that when it's under initial construction, it's residential construction, and the use of how long something may be rented or not is the function. So when it's initially constructed, it meets the building codes, their plans in place at the time. And then the life safety affidavit is, like I said, it's a tool. I know the city of Beaufort's a little bit different, and I think their inspections are a little bit different as far as how they do their procedures there. But we assume that they're telling us the truth until we find out otherwise, and then we investigate deeper. And that's the approach that we've recommended. Should you request some changes, we certainly can review that with legal and the building safety division and move forward. And this is just a process. So this wouldn't necessarily affect the actual ordinance as adopted, but the procedures that staff would move forward with. But again, that was the rationale with the initial proposal, was that that affidavit was a legal affidavit that they must follow. And if we found out they weren't, then we would move forward accordingly. So, and like I said, I would defer to Terry for any additional comments on that. But like I said, that would be a process change that we could certainly change if council so desires.
Okay.
Councilman Hamilton, this is Terry for a second. It was our thought, and the ordinances from throughout the state and throughout the country vary greatly. A number of them have inspections upfront, and a number of them rely upon the affidavit. It was our thought that an inspection that's done on January 1 would really have no bearing unless we were going to inspect monthly or much more than once a year. An inspection in January would not have a big bearing on what happens in June. Our thought was to make the rental agent and or owner be 100% responsible for compliance through an affidavit procedure. Therefore, we would believe that any town liability would be fairly effectively shut off. So that was the thought behind that. And of course, it's all premised on the fact that if it's a home, we don't have the fire inspection up front, as Heather mentioned a couple times already. So that's how we got to where we are now. Happy to listen to any input from council as a whole, and we can adapt it any way y'all like.
Can we jump to Larry for a minute, Fred, or did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Okay, Larry.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with a contact that was made with me this week about, and I'm sure it's probably been addressed, but I can't remember the guidelines. Someone who owns a house and a garage apartment, for an example, now, that is renting both of them short term. What is are there grandfather clauses that because they've been doing it, they can continue to do it, and anyone new has to go by this new? How does this affect that property owner? So,
So the way that we've addressed that is similar to any other legally non-conforming use. So if the units are already licensed, and right now how they were permitted was through a home occupation permit, if they are legally operating as a home occupation and have those licenses in effect, they can continue to do so, and they're grandfathered. The same grandfathered provisions for any use that would be created as again, that would change the rules, so to speak. So yes, they would be grandfathered as long as they are legally conforming uses at this time.
So they would not have to follow these new guidelines as far as only one short-term rental per property?
Correct. They would still have to go through that annual permit process, but as far as the rules and regulations in the Unified Development Ordinance, they would be grandfathered in.
Okay. I understand all this, and I really want to just respond because I've heard both sides of it. In my opinion, the reason that we are really looking at this is because neighbors are beginning to feel like they don't know their neighbors. Someone who lives in a house, and then the two houses next door or being rented all the time, new people coming in and out. And it's actually, in my opinion, that's basically turning residential properties into commercial properties if people are not living on that lot. Is that the consensus of this whole idea? I mean, I'm asking. That's kind of why I feel like we need to do this ordinance, is to prevent someone from coming in, buying all the houses on a street that's zoned residential, except for the one or two who may not want to sell, and turning it into essentially commercial property.
I think that's why what I've heard from people who brought this up, Larry, I'll answer until Heather does. I think we're being more proactive than reactive, the way I feel. And I think it's a very easy ordinance, and a lot of town stakeholders have put their advice in that do have short-term rentals themselves. So
right.
That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. I think that's kind of brings out the importance of it, or why we need to do something before it gets farther out of hand.
And I will add that was, as you recall, in the strategic plan process, staff was challenged. I shouldn't say challenged, but staff was directed at calibrating land uses and looking at various land uses. And the short-term rental use was one that was specifically called out that needed more attention. And we went through various stakeholder groups and workshops to hear from the community and the residents and how to address it. And at the time, staff had been addressing it as a home occupation. So it wasn't something that was specifically addressed in any of our ordinances. Short-term rental didn't appear in any searches you do in the UDO or the municipal code. So it was a way to align the ordinance with business practices, how they've changed over the years. And so we can get a sense, you'll hear from Chris Forrester, and I think in the next agenda item about, some ways to actually monitor it and permit it and how we'll implement it moving forward, because at this time we don't have a real accurate count on what's there.
Yep.
Right.
Any other questions of Heather on this? The second and final reading, we've had one suggestion, I think a suggestion or a concern on process, not the actual code, so we can make that edit. Anyone else?
I would just like to say, I wanted to echo what Fred stated. I'd mentioned that the last reading that we had with this issue on our issue, but with this particular agenda item, just on how we would actually track or like get verification that the short-term rental owners were actually doing or having the required items. So if, I don't know what suggestions we could come up with on how to do that. If it's them, since the fire department doesn't have the jurisdiction to go in there and a building inspector can't go in unless an issue arises. I don't know if we can have them submit like images or documentation or something showing that they are meeting those standards for our benefit, opposed to just having hearsay that or word of mouth that the items are done.
I have a thought, and that you made me think of this. I'm looking at the sheet. With technology as it is today, why can't the application come with a video, a YouTube link, or pictures? And you have the ability to audit at any time. And I don't know if that's in there. Maybe we need to add the ability to do a sampling and audit, because I do think we need to have eyes on and not wait for complaints, and have some visual way of confirming it.
Lisa, I think
Right.
I thought we discussed this. I can't remember the details, but where there would be a placard or a license on these properties with our town information, so that anyone that comes here and is not right, or they're not following the guidelines, so to speak, can respond back to us. Didn't we talk about that? It seems like.
Thought we did in a workshop. I don't remember. I'll let Heather have a memory on it.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that, but I think the issue more so that I was raising, and Fred was, the concern was the specific items that they need to have to get the placard. So like the carbon monoxide detector and the fire extinguisher and things like that. We were saying, like, how do you actually know someone has that before giving them the placard? If no one's going in to actually verify that, and anyone could say that they have those items and actually don't.
Right. I hear you.
So either, I mean, we can change that and have someone go in and do a check of the checklist. Or we can do the other suggestion and have them provide documentation on top of the checklist sheet signed that it's done.
Right.
So, I mean, that is where we can do it right now. So I'm fine either way. I kind of think we should be proactive, not reactive on all of it. Just how do you want to do it? How do you want it handled?
Mayor Sulka, this is Mark. May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Heather, Terry, would you explain in your slide, and I think it's important, you indicate that Savannah doesn't, but Beaufort does. What does that mean? Explain a process that Beaufort employs, and what they do for inspections. I think some of the issue is, what are we inspecting when we go there, and why are we there, right? So Heather, perhaps you or Terry could explain the Beaufort situation.
So from what I understand, the city of Beaufort does do an inspection. Speaking with, again, it's all an interpretation of the state building code as far as how it's classified. So the building code only has residential or commercial. They don't have a short-term rental or anything of that nature. So it's a matter of what does it fall under. If it falls under residential, it's built as a residential structure, whole different set of plans, requirements, versus sprinklers and handicap accessibility, just a whole different character. And it's not necessarily, I think, a character of a short-term rental. So most communities in Savannah, I don't know what building codes they fall under, so I can't speak to exactly them, but, and they do not, they have the affidavit on the, if I were to pull that staff report up. So Savannah does the affidavit, Beaufort does an inspection. We can do an inspection. It gets a little bit more complicated in exactly what are we inspecting, because if a building inspector goes in a property and sees other things that are not up to the current code, where does that legal separation, where does that separate? You know, can they put on, I don't want to say put on their blinders, but are they only inspecting for the short-term rental certificate, or are they inspecting for current codes, because current codes change? So that's where the proposal, again, working with Terry and Richardson, was the affidavit and the certification, and move forward from there. But like I said, I defer to legal on exactly the process, but I do, you know, we can look into we'll look into all of that. We can look into, again, the pictures, the photos, the videos, and host compliance. And some of the other software companies may have an easy way to even store that or monitor that, or follow City of Beaufort's lead, just for an example.
Let me jump in before Terry speaks. I think you've heard 3 of council that need some kind of visual, some kind of confirmation that smoke detector in each bedroom. It's just the checklist. Smoke detector, that one's on each floor, carbon monoxide, bedroom has a window, functioning fire extinguisher, address number posted. Those are so simple to have a walkthrough video, but they're so simple. I don't think a code inspector has to go in. Again, I wish we knew what Beaufort did. Why not copy Beaufort? It just seems easy if you have council, the 3 of 5, 2 haven't spoken really yet on it, to verify that. I mean, that's what right there. Isn't this all we want to verify?
Yeah, Lisa,
Yeah.
And you're right. See, what Heather just said, we'll confuse. If you're going into doing a home inspection, then maybe we are all doing too much. But they're coming to us asking us to give them a business license to do short-term rental. So we don't need to inspect their whether they meet all the codes. We want to inspect the things that we're telling them that's required to have a short-term rental.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So Terry, why can't we have someone, does it have to be a code inspector? Why can't we have someone in the business license department, or have that visual video photo showing this that's attached with this application on these items?
Mayor, it does not necessarily have to be a building inspector. You're correct. It could be done by a walkthrough, or it could be done through a video or a photo presentation. And if I'm starting to hear council saying we want a walkthrough, if that's the consensus of council, we will do that in the procedural aspects. I think we're still fine with the ordinance as presented tonight, but some of the implementation documentation we will have to change, and we can put an inspection in. That is not a big deal. I would ask for some guidance on how often do you want an inspection to be done? Is it annual? Is it quarterly? We're on a little slippery slope about we're going to start doing short-term rentals like that. What about small hotels? Are we're going to worry about those big hotels? Certainly that's not something that I think we should try to get involved in, but the short-term rentals is a defined little character, a little unit, and we can certainly do it if that's the will of council.
Mayor, may I jump in?
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, everything, I was going to say exactly what Terry was just saying, and he covered it distinctly. I mean, we don't do that to hotels. The only way I could even conceivably see an inspection is when you get your business license, and you may renew it annually, because like Terry said earlier tonight, you may get an inspection today, but it doesn't mean somebody walks off 3 weeks later with the fire extinguisher or something that, didn't get replaced. I mean, you can't manage that. It's impossible. And then part of this whole concept was to shift the liability over to the people who are actually conducting the business and getting the business license, and not placing all the burden on us and the liability to go with it.
But I think if it's for the items that we have and as simple as they are, even in any business, food truck, restaurant, whatever it is, in order to get the requirements of that license, there's certain proof that you have to show. So a video walkthrough, as Lisa suggested, should suffice, because if we're going to put a requirement of items up, but we're not actually going to check the requirements, it kind of defeats the purpose of the requirement. And why not just give, a person a license or permit to have a short-term rental just off of an application? It kind of, seems like if we're going to include these items, there should be some type of process on our end that we can verify they're doing it. And it doesn't need to be a monthly thing. If the permit provides them, this variance for a year, or it's annual, then, that should be the time to make sure that those items each year are being met as they go to renew the short-term rental.
And plus, hotels fall under a whole different category for being audited, and the state requires them to follow certain guidelines that's not comparing apples to apples when you put a hotel in this conversation.
Well, and I appreciate the thought of the comparison, but these are residential homes being converted into a nightly stay. Hotels, I don't think we've seen a house be converted into a hotel, and hotels have their own codes. I don't see a problem. I think it should be on the applicant, but I think they should either present photos or video. And that can be every year whenever they renew it. If they shouldn't change it, but they also with checkout, they should go through and check their room to make sure nothing was taken. I mean, there's so much on the owner anyway. They need to, especially today, they got to clean and sanitize. They can go through this checklist on the back of a door and make sure they have their fire extinguisher.
Mayor and council.
Annual makes more sense to me.
A what, Dan?
Annual makes more sense to me.
So do I hear annual kind of overview? Are y'all okay that they submit a video or photos? I mean, that keeps staff from going out to so many, and then they have it in a file. If somebody did complain, at least we have it to say, well, no, there's a window, there's an address. I mean, it's really protects all parties.
Right.
Heather, if you take the checklist that you have up on the screen now, and you added another column that just said something like proof presented, videos or photos or something like that, you could have their initials and then what proof they presented on each of them. As long as we had some repository for that proof, that would suffice.
We could certainly do that. Looking into it a little bit more detail, some of the other communities even require, a receipt of, smoke inspectors are installed or things like that. So I think, I don't want to say we can get creative, but we certainly can add a column that's verification of one sort or another, or some communities, I don't know if some short-term rental owners may choose to have a private inspection and just for their own peace of mind. I don't know, but that's something that others have done as well. So
Heather,
I do that.
I think the video or photo keeps it simple.
I like simple.
Is anyone against that thought? So
No, I think that's a great idea.
Larry, I hadn't heard from you. I've heard Fred, I've heard Dan. Bridget, are you okay with that? Okay. Silence. I don't see Larry. Is Larry on the call?
His iPad died. He texted me.
Okay. So Larry's out of for the moment. Okay, so how do we change this in the motion, Terry?
I think the motion is fine, Mayor. if you could pull it up for us, Heather.
Yeah.
And we will note that our checklist, which is not a part of the ordinance itself, although it's an attachment to the ordinance, isn't it, Heather?
It is.
It's an
is,
attachment to the packets. It's not attachment to the actual ordinance itself.
Okay, okay. Well, it's just with,
It's just an attachment to the packet.
perhaps with this motion that's up on the screen, we just also add in there that the procedures must involve video or photographic confirmation of the checklist. And that would be fine.
Okay,
Easy enough?
I got it. Well, if nothing else, let's move. Is there a motion to approve on second and final reading of amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinance, Chapter 6 and Article 5 to include that the procedures must include a photo or video confirmation of the checklist? Does that make sense?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Is there a motion on that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And Larry was absent from that vote, Kim. Okay, let me scroll back to page 1 again. We are on formal agenda items. Chris, you are up. Consideration of an ordinance amending the Town of Bluffton 2021 budget to reflect the addition of short-term revenue per the master fee schedule. This is second and final reading. Was there anything changed? And did council have any questions from kind of follow up from our last item?
I have no changes as far as the budget amendment goes. We do have Bruce McCaskill with host compliance with us, who will give a brief 5-minute overview of his tool and compliance services.
Oh, okay. He can.
I think he's logging in now.
So were there any more questions of Chris before he gets on this? If not, we'll listen to Bruce's, and we're listening to him. Why
He's with host compliance, and he'll go over kind of the compliance procedures and the services they provide for monitoring the short-term rental within Bluffton.
Okay, and are we voting on this, or is this something we've already contracted out?
As part of the budget amendment, if the budget amendment is approved, it is within the dollar threshold of management to contract for this.
Okay. I didn't. Okay. Well, where is he?
He should be on. Bruce, can you hear us?
I see his name, but he has his video cut off and there's no volume. Can we, while we're trying to get him, can we jump to the next item, which is also second and final reading on the bond?
Sure.
Okay. He's on, but his video is cut off and he doesn't have a microphone. So he must have signed in without audio.
And Mayor and Council, Mayor, may I ask a question? Another one, it's Mark. If you want that presentation, and if we can't hear Bruce at this point, you want to move on in the agenda, we can show you that presentation at a later date. It's really an overview of the software that we will utilize to capture and monitor our short-term rentals in this town. You know, we know the ones that are out there, but we also don't know the ones that are as well. If you'd like that, send you a tutorial, or I should say a link to that in your email. That might be easiest than moving on and coming back.
Well, I'm fine with that. I didn't know we were going to have him on. We're voting on an item, but then he's showing us the tool. I think it's great. We all learn it. I'll let council decide. Anybody?
I'm good with Mark's suggestion.
Okay. Anybody not good with Mark's suggestion? Okay. Could you let Bruce know that we can't see or hear him, but thank you for trying.
Okay.
And we will move, so we can vote on this without the presentation. So we're at item 1. There are no other changes. Were there any questions of Chris on this item? If not, is there a motion on second and final reading to amend the Town of Bluffton FY 2021 budget to reflect the addition of short-term rental revenue per the master fee schedule?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Please thank him for trying, Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, we moved number 3 up and Chris is still up, and that is consideration of approval of an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of not to exceed 5.250 million general obligation bond series 2021 or such other appropriate series designation for the purpose of funding sewer projects. This also is second and final reading, and I don't think there were changes requested last month.
There are not. There were a few questions from last month that I would like to take a moment to address, if I may.
Wonderful, thank you.
So just briefly, these are a few slides that were pulled from the FY21 budget process. Just as a reminder, these were reviewed with you during that time as part of the budget approval back in June. So this is just a reminder that the WAPAC originally came back with a recommendation of a fee increase to 150. Given the circumstances, we did an analysis of kind of our needs and did we really tightened our belt on it and said, what could we reduce the fee to, or increase, what would be the minimum increase that would allow us to accelerate our capital program for stormwater. And so the recommendation at the time was from 98 per impervious square foot unit to 115, as well as the plan review fee that was approved. Again, this is an overview of the Stormwater Utility Fund. The big takeaway from this one was that in the past, given the needs, capital needs, we were spending down fund balance. I believe someone has their Facebook on, if they can mute the Facebook.
And we have Franny on. Bridget, if y'all could put on mute while Chris is talking, that would be super, because we'll hear the Facebook. There you go, Chris.
Thank you. So as part of the FY21 budget with the additional fee revenue, we see here that we are no longer spending down fund balance. Again, this overviews what the additional revenue will generate, $256,000 for the fee increase and approximately $365,000 for the plan review fee. Here are the projects that were approved in the CIP for stormwater, with the asterisks noted that these would only be executed with a bond authorization that came at a later date. This is an overview of the projects and potential schedules. This was one of the questions, I believe, from Councilor Wood a month ago. So this breaks it down by fiscal year where the funding would fall. And over here we have the project start date as well as the projected completion date. The TBD are the stormwater projects that have not gone through any budget approval. So these are estimated. And we don't have good estimates from engineering at this time as far as the timeline on those projects. They haven't gotten to that point. Within your packets, there is this, the project management team provided this timeline for the projects with a great visual of the start and end dates for the proposed projects as part of the CIP. Were there any questions on this?
Do y'all have any questions from his answers from last month's questions? Great, thanks for providing that, Chris.
Absolutely.
So no other questions. This is second and final reading. Is there a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of not to exceed 5.250 million general obligation bond series 2021 or such other appropriate series designation for the purpose of funding sewer projects?
I'll make that motion.
Is there welcome back. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, Franny, for being on. And I think I saw Brian as well. Thank you both for helping us through all of this. Next, we jump to item 2, which is now item 3, and that's consideration of an ordinance to amend certain provisions to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances to authorize meetings to be held telephonic or other electronic means. This is first reading. Scott, you are up.
On my mute button right away this time. Okay. What this is, to give you a little background, the emergency ordinance that you first passed on March 17th had a section in it that allowed for electronic meetings in lieu of physical meetings to conduct public business. Since then, you've renewed that emergency ordinance 4 times, with the latest renewal being last month, October 13th. The current emergency ordinance that carries that section 1, which allows you to meet electronically, expires on December 13th. So the ordinance we have for you to consider tonight will give you a permanent solution, and it will codify the ability for you to hold public meetings by telephonic or other electronic means. Specifically, this ordinance is applicable to portions of Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 of the Town Code. And the language in those portions is amended to provide the option of attending meetings either in person, conditions permitting. For example, tonight conditions are not permitting because of the pandemic, or via electronic means. Provisions for providing public comment during public comment periods and public hearings are also included in these amendments. Next steps is pending successful first reading tonight. This ordinance would be effective on second and final reading on December 8th. And this is important because, as you recall from just a moment ago, December 13th, your emergency ordinance that has that section that applies to electronic meetings expires. And this would kick in prior to that expiration, and you would not need to renew that portion of the emergency ordinance when and if you renew your emergency ordinances. And then next, we would amend the town code as necessary to include these provisions for electronic meetings. Any questions?
Thanks, Scott. Any questions of council on this? What I like about it, and I had asked Mark when on one of our meetings, it gives us all flexibility. Even if we have a council meeting in person and someone's out of town, they can now call in legally through Zoom and be present at a meeting, whether they're caught up in traffic or couldn't get back in time. And it just keeps all of council with the ability to meet as a whole. And I think it's nice to see we're moving where we can meet this way if we have to. Hurricanes, we can never meet before because everyone's all over the country evacuating. So I like this. Any other questions or thoughts for Scott?
Yeah, if I may, Mayor, just to clarify for the public what this is, and I understand it myself, but I just want to kind of put it out there. This is not the norm. This is not what we're going to be doing. We'll be back in our brand new chamber at Town Hall so that everyone can come in as soon as we get through this pandemic situation and feel like it's safe for everyone to do that. This is, like you just mentioned, it's just a tool in the box so that if we are out of town or whatever, and there are important issues that we can meet the way we're meeting today, and it's legal as being present. I mean, that's the way, layman terms, that's the way I put it. I, along with all of you guys, I'm sure we want to get back to our real meetings so that people can come in, express themselves, and get back to norm as soon as possible. So this is just a tool so that if we can't, for some reason, we can always use this as, if one of us, two of us, or whatever can't be there, it's legal to hold a meeting. Am I correct on that?
That's how I interpret it. I tell you too, it's also good for our committees and commissions because it's not just council, right, Scott?
That's correct. This is for all public meetings. It applies to boards, commissions, and committees as well, which is why we had to amend Chapter 3 also of the town code. And Councilman Toomer is 100% on track. It also applies, for instance, we don't know how long this pandemic will last or if there will be another one. But if most members of council are feeling well and they want to be present, and there's a member of council who feels like they're not, may have some symptoms, for example, they can stay home and participate in the meeting. It's not just for travel. So it gives you the ultimate flexibility to be able to conduct town business publicly. it gives flexibility for the public to be able to participate electronically as well. So it's a permanent solution.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. And with our commissions, I know in the past, there's been a struggle with a quorum on a committee or so, and now they can really push it to get someone to come in on Zoom to meet, and their vote counts, and they are participants in the meeting. So
Yes,
very
ma'am.
smart. Anything else from council? Okay, if not, is there a motion to approve an ordinance to amend certain provisions of the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances to authorize meetings to be held by telephonic or other electronic means and matters related thereto as presented?
So moved.
Your second?
Second.
Any discussion? Great, so this goes into effect as of tonight, and we move to coming back in person, and we have anyone who is not comfortable with that, then this is for us to use, and that's all I gotta say. Any other discussion?
Mayor, this is actually first reading, so it would go into effect in December.
So sorry, I
Yeah,
knew that.
this is not an emergency ordinance. This is a permanent ordinance.
Okay, so this is on first reading, and we will see it again in December.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That, bless you. That's unanimous. We are moving on to consent agenda. Let me get back to my agenda. Here we go. So next up is our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from that to discuss further? If not, is there a motion to approve the 3 items in the consent agenda? Your motion.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Great information. I'd urge everyone to pull the reports up from all of our departments. If you're following us on social media, they're really great reports. It gives you a real spotlight of what we're doing, as well as our town manager's report. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Next, we have executive session. Is there a motion to go into executive session for personnel matters relating to boards, committees, and commissions? That's FOIA 3470A1, and contractual matters relating to Buckwalter Place, 3470A5.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? We are in executive session. We'll be back with action from executive session roughly 30 minutes.